let's talk about strikes, because I told y'all I wanted to dig into this a little bit. Let's talk about strikes. A.R. Smitty, I'm going to read that super chat shortly. Let's spend 10 minutes because our ports, this is something that is not really getting national coverage. This is not something that's being talked about. But the ports, remember when we had distribution issues? Remember when Kamala Harris was saying that, oh man, we got our distribution back together. Now everything is going to be normal and we need to lower the prices. Well, the workers at the ports is thinking about going on strike. Let me give you all a little bit of insight into that.
The nation's consumer supply chain faces severe disruptions if dock workers at ports along the East and Gulf Coasts go on strike, and the deadline is quickly approaching. Investigator Tim McNicholas is in Jersey City with the details and the possible fallout.
Work at some of the busiest ports in North America could soon come to a halt.
When my men hit the streets, from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down.
The union, which represents more than 40,000 longshoremen at 36 ports, including major hubs like Charleston, Houston, and Miami, is demanding wage increases as well as protection from job-killing automation.
I've been fighting automation for years. They destroyed L.A.
Workers are threatening to strike if a new labor agreement with shipping companies represented by the United States Maritime Alliance is not reached by October 1st.
All activity in the Port of New York and New Jersey with regards to containerized cargo and automobile cargo will cease.
Each year, more than $200 billion worth of goods, including car parts, construction materials, and produce pass through the Port of New York and New Jersey alone. That trade supports more than 500,000 local jobs.
A 2-week strike could, cause these disruptions to feed into early 2025.
Ryan Sweet with Oxford Economics says if a deal isn't reached in time, a stoppage could disrupt more than half of U.S. shipping traffic.
This is going to be very disruptive to the U.S. economy.
In a statement to CBS News, the U.S. Maritime Alliance says it has not been able to schedule new bargaining sessions with the union, adding the only way to resolve this is to resume negotiations.
Let me tell you something. This is an issue. This in particular is an issue that I would like to see Harris speak on. This is one of the things that I think is meaningful as far as having conversation. We could talk back and forth about how drunk she looked on Oprah's show. We could talk about, how she continues to talk about her neighbor's lawn and all of that. I want somebody to ask her, because if this happens on her watch, this could absolutely be disastrous for the American economy. Listen, this could be disastrous for the American economy. I would like to know how she would solve for and whether or not she aligns with the longshoremen at our ports and what she thinks is a reasonable negotiation tactic in order to make sure that we keep all of our ports open and our distribution channels running and relevant. A true test for our leader, I believe, should be her position on issues like this and how they keep the American economy running while at the same time protecting jobs. What is her position on it? Meanwhile, more strikes are taking place. Boeing is preparing for a very long strike.
Our Phil LeBeau has the latest on those negotiations and how much it could cost Boeing if it drags on. Phil.
It'll cost a lot, Leslie, and that's the question. How long does it go before Boeing is forced to do some type of a capital raise? That is a real possibility. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let me bring you up to speed in terms of where the strike is 1 week in. The furloughs are starting of white-collar workers in the Puget Sound area for Boeing today. These will be rolling furloughs. Tens of thousands will be impacted. They only talked on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, and according to the Machinist Union, there was little progress on the key issues. Look, the main issue is pay. The company offered 25% over 4 years. 95% of the workers said, that's not going to cut it. They want 40% over 4 years.
Do you know why that is? It's trickle up economics. They don't care about percentages. Workers don't look at percentages. Unions don't look at percentages. You know what they look like? You know what they look at? They compare themselves against other industries. And any good negotiator or anybody that understands business knows, and this is one of the reasons why we've been talking about over the last year, 2 years about what was going on with minimum wage strikes, because think about it. Don't talk to me about percentage. They want to know about wage increase, what that specific number is. Because if you tell somebody, well, listen, we only going to increase you 40%, but you was making X amount of dollars, and then they start looking over there and they saying, but McDonald's workers over there in California is making $25 an hour. They're going to be making $25 an hour. That don't register with them. When they look at the United Auto Workers and that union, and they say, but, you know, they beat up their companies and they're going to be making $40 an hour over something. When you look at UPS workers and they look at that bargaining agreement, when they look at what's going on at the ports, when they're paying attention to what's going on with the Teamsters, what they start to say, and they get you over a barrel, they say, we don't care about percentages, we care about the number. So now it's kind of sort of artificial inflation, because when prices rose and then at the same time you've seen one industry fall, what you'll start to see is that start to trickle over into other industries, which will continue to push up the price of vehicles. It'll push up the price of planes. It'll ultimately push up the price of airline tickets, gas. Everything is going to be affected as a result of it. And so you see all of these industries starting to fall, and it was going to be a trickle-down effect. But they were hoping that they was able to get through this election. And this is the truth. This is why Biden, for the first time, he was one of the people that actually went to the picket line in order to get the UAW endorsement. But at the same time, it was going to affect other industries, and it was going to even affect non-unionized plants, because they were then going to be forced, even if they were in states that were at will, they were going to be forced to follow suit to make sure that they didn't fall behind or they wasn't going to be unionized as a result of it. So now you see everybody being affected by what everybody else is doing, and it's affecting all industries. Notice, everybody is going on strike at the same time. Right after they ratified that contract with the UAW, and then California passed that act, and then New York passed it with the gig workers as far as trying to make them employees. Now you see all of this happening right before the election. Boeing is looking for some support, or not Boeing, the workers against Boeing that's on strike, they looking for some support. The Teamsters recently, we're going to get into the Teamsters in a minute. Don't worry about it. Notices is starting to be filed, even with the auto industry, as far as the UAW members, they starting to say we want to strike. Stellantis is having problems with the UAW going back and forth because they're trying to remove product out of the United States of America and move it over to Canada and Mexico. You just seen what was happening at the ports. Hotel workers all across the board, they going on strike. Everybody is going on strike at the same time, right before the election.
Whether or not they get there remains to be seen, but 25% is not going to do it. And this raises the question, okay, if this gets dragged out, what happens? Wells Fargo out with a note this week saying, we think BA, meaning Boeing, needs to reach a resolution with its union by the end of the month or potentially raise equity. And
so that means that, remember when the UAW went on strike, what happened was, even though the automotive companies have been raking in healthy profits over years, they had to take on more debt. Why did they take on more debt? Even though interest rates were higher, automakers, Ford Motor Company, General Motors, Stellantis, they started taking on more debt. They took out more debt because they anticipated for it to be a long strike, and they had to make sure that they were liquid, right? They had to make sure that they could still resume operations, that they were able to pay out the bonuses, that they were able to pay out all of the operations and all of the additional costs were still ongoing, but they had to become more liquid to absorb the cost of the strike itself and the prolonged issues that was going to come along with the strike. What Wells Fargo was basically telling Boeing is that you're going to have liquidity issues if you continue to prolong this strike and you don't come to a resolution, which basically puts Boeing between a rock and a hard place. Boeing was already suffering when it came to the quality issues and the stuff that was happening with the national government. They don't care about that. They don't care if your CEO is before the Senate. They don't care about any of that. They don't care about the quality issues. The only thing they care about is whether or not they can pay their mortgage at the end of the day, and if their pay is commensurate with other industries. And so now they know that they got the company between a rock and a hard place.
Challenge is this. Their liquidity at the end of the second quarter, $12.6 billion. Now, they're doing some moves right now to conserve cash, But this strike is going to put pressure on it because they don't get the free cash flow from delivering 737 MAXs or the 777 or the 767. There will be some free cash flow because they're still delivering Dreamliners built in South Carolina. And when you've got $53 billion in debt and you're looking at the possibility of your credit rating being...
That's why I told y'all inside of Stock Club, make sure y'all join the Patreon. Do not. I don't care if it's a defense manufacturer, but it's also an airline company. Make planes. Do not invest in these industries that are tumultuous, that have a whole lot of debt, and that depend on the debt in order for their survival. $53 billion in debt, no liquidity, facing downward pressure. It's not an industry that you want to invest in at all.
Dropped down to junk status. Yeah, the financial pressures are going to be building on Boeing, guys.
Obviously gives the union additional leverage, right, Phil?
Oh, I think the union feels they have a lot of leverage right now. I mean, nobody wants to stay on strike, and the union would love to get back to work, but they also feel like, oh, look, we are not happy with what's happened over the last couple of contracts. And the last 8 years, they look at it and say, what happened to wages around the world? You know what happened to wages for machinists who are out in the Puget Sound area? I think that contract locked in a 4% annual rate or 4% raise over 8 years. Now, there were some cost of living adjustments as well, but the rank and file, time and again when I talked with them, all said the same thing. 4% over 8 years. Would you take that?
What happened to wages around the world? That's what they say. They don't care about how healthy the company is. They said, listen, they got money. Where's our money? That's all they care about. All right. Teamsters won't endorse Kamala Harris. The first time a Democratic candidate is not endorsed by the Teamsters since 1996.
Tonight, in a blow to Vice President Harris, the powerful Teamsters union announcing it will make no endorsement in the 2024 presidential race. Harris becoming the first Democratic nominee not to win the backing of America's largest union in nearly 3 decades. The union releasing an internal poll showing 58% of its members support Trump, 31% back Harris. In a statement writing it was, quote, left...
Let me stop that. Let me back that up. 58% of its own members. Please miss me with the BS with these other fake polls that's out there. They did their own poll amongst their own members. The Teamsters said that around 58% of its members were willing to say that they support Trump versus Kamala Harris. First time since 1996. I'm telling you that it's a wave of red that's happening all across this country, and you're gonna witness history. In November, you're going to witness history.
Support Trump, 31% back Harris. In a statement writing it was, quote, left with few commitments on top Teamsters issues from either candidate and found no definitive support among members for either party's nominee.
Mr. President.
You know, that's an excuse, right? Because they can't say we're endorsing Trump. AOC was out there crying. Her voice was shivering. They can't officially say, hey, man, we endorsing Trump. They going to say, we just not going to endorse Harris the first time since 1996. It speaks volumes.
Any reaction to the Teamsters' decision not to endorse?
No, they were. It's a great honor. They're not going to endorse the Democrats. That's a big thing.
Big difference in those big industrial states, you think? They're going to make a difference?
I think it will. Yeah, I think so. The Teamsters carry a lot of weight.
Harris has won the backing of other labor groups, including the United Auto Workers. The
Nope.
Harris campaign.
Joe Biden did. That was a Biden thing, first of all. And secondly, is because he was in bed with Sean Fain. It's not because the rank and file members agreed with it.
Saying, quote, Teamsters locals across the country have already endorsed her alongside the overwhelming majority of organized labor. It comes as we're seeing signs of new, tighter security measures for Trump. The FBI director saying he's devoting the, quote, full force of the agency to investigate the 2 attempts on Trump's life within just 2 months. Trump overnight thanking Vice President Harris for calling him.
Today, a little while ago, I got a very nice call from Kamala. No, it was very nice.
Meanwhile, Harris, in a speech to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, blasting Trump's call for mass deportations of undocumented migrants.
Donald Trump and his
We're going to get to that next.
extremist allies will keep trying to pull us backward. They have pledged to carry out the largest deportation, a mass deportation, in American history. Imagine what that would look like and what that would be. How's that going to happen? Massive raids? Massive detention camps? What are they talking about?
And get ready
This
to see
lady
right now.
is so off the reservation. I don't even think that she be knowing what she gonna say when she about to say it.